He was moved by our mission many years ago, and he decided to make wheelchair distributions one of his primary goals during his year as president of Rotary around the world. His passionate leadership resulted in tens of thousands of Rotarians participating and many hundreds of clubs and districts stepping up. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please give a warm welcome for Mr. Richard King.
Let me tell you that it's an axiom that's true in this world that when you give, you get. And Rotary has received more from having become acquainted with Ken Behring, his family, and the Wheelchair Foundation than we possibly could have ever received. I was deeply honored and privileged to be the president of the organization when we made wheelchairs an integral part of our program. We could not have done it without the work of John and Linda Grant, Rotary leaders who were asked to do this by Frank Devlin and myself, and many, many, many Rotary leaders like Bob Bitter, who is here tonight, one of our sponsors, who's done so much for the Wheelchair Foundation, and Rotary leaders around the globe. I can only tell you that it is always the Rotarian, the individual volunteer, who receives the greatest reward. People come to me as I travel the globe, and they say, well, of course, Mr. Behring can afford it. And I say, yes, he can afford it. The difference is that he does it. I've met a lot of people in this world who can afford it. They don't do it. Ken Behring does it, and that's the difference. I was in New Jersey at a wheelchair distribution right here in the United States with my aide, Bob Koldus, a past international director from New Jersey. And it was at a Catholic diocese, and the governor of New Jersey was there that day, and television cameras, the church hierarchy was there, and I was supposed to give the important speech. Big crowd of people, just like we have here tonight. And Bob and I took a 6-year-old girl who had been born with spina bifida, and we put her in a new red wheelchair, right in front of the audience, right down front and center. And she was very excited about this. And as you've seen in these wonderful movies, the smile that came over her face was just wonderful. But all of a sudden, she realized that she could move the wheelchair herself, and she could move herself for the first time in her life without being carried or crawling. And she began to wheel the wheelchair back and forth, down and front, in front of everybody. And everybody watched her. You could see that everybody in the crowd was moved and touched and received a great gift. I quietly put my speech away because the speech was right there in front of us. Afterwards, her father came to me and he said, Mr. King, thank you to Rotary for the wheelchair. And I said, you don't have to thank me. Some Rotarian somewhere in the world made a contribution, and Mr. Behring matched it, and that's why you have this wheelchair. And he said, you know, every time I carried my little girl into a school playground and the kids were kicking ball and running and playing, my heart broke. Because I knew that she wondered why she couldn't run and kick the ball like her 2 little brothers who were there that day and the other children. And he said, you know, I'm getting a little older and she's getting heavier and it was getting harder for me to carry her. And so today, you've given a gift to my entire family, to her mother, to her little brothers who are just as happy as she is, to her and to her father. And we cannot thank you enough. And I thought to myself, notwithstanding a couple of back surgeries that I've had lately, I've always been able to walk. My children have always walked. My wife walks. I don't know anybody in my immediate family who's ever needed a wheelchair. So I don't fully comprehend the gift we gave to that little 6-year-old girl that day. But I will take with me to my grave and beyond the gift she gave to me. Now, what kind of a debt do I owe to Ken Behring the day he walked into my office at Rotary and said, I'd appreciate it if Rotary would partner with us? What kind of a debt and obligation is owed to a family like this? to Dave and Jeff and their brothers who do such a marvelous work, to Pat, because everybody knows that the spouse is an integral part of any kind of a gift such as the Wheelchair Foundation. What kind of a gift to the entire staff of the Wheelchair Foundation, who have enriched me and made me a better human being than I otherwise would have ever been. All of us tonight owe a great debt, which we can never possibly repay, because one man with a vision had the idea that he could help people become mobile who otherwise would crawl in the dirt all of their lives. What kind of a debt? I can only tell you that on the plaque out there on the wall with the founding partners of the Wheelchair Foundation is not only Rotary International, but the Mormon Church. And I'm a high councilman in the Mormon Church, and perhaps I can just reflect to you that Brigham Young University gave Ken Behring a degree which it very, very rarely gives to anybody, an honorary doctorate of Christian service. And it's an amazing thing that this man has touched so many lives in so many organizations, with the help of Ken Hoffman and so many others who have the same kind of a vision as does Ken Behring. I can only tell you that Rotary International is pleased, proud, privileged to be part of the wheelchair program, because it has done more for Rotary and Rotary clubs and Rotarians the world over than we could ever possibly do for some child who needs a wheelchair, as great as that gift is. I close with the words of a great woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize for her poetry in Chile. And she sums up the urgency of what it is we do when we put a child, or anybody for that matter, in a new wheelchair, when she writes, Gabrielle Mistral, these words: "The child cannot wait. Right now is the time his bones are being formed, his blood is being made, his senses being developed. To him, we cannot answer tomorrow. His name is today." Ken Behring and all of you associated with you, sir, thank you, and God bless you.